Yes, but we have to play, ladies and gentlemen, in tribute to Georgia's big win over Texas. Georgia Bulldogs fight song, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Line of Scrimmage. I am your ugly ass host, Ryan Neff. Yes, Georgia with the huge victory at Texas. Texas finally welcome to the SEC. And I see as he's already popped into the green room. But before I bring him on, we've got to do this. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Indiana Hoosiers fight song. Bloomington, Indiana. Indiana having a magical season so far. They are currently 7-0. Big game against Washington this week. Although Washington isn't what they've been in the past. Okay, let's bring him on. It's Dylan Sinn, ladies and gentlemen. Dylan, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
No problem. Look, let's just jump into it here. Indiana, 7-0. Magical season so far in Bloomington. I think they're going to beat Washington, although losing your starting quarterback is big. But the way they're playing right now, Dylan, I was just looking over some of the stats, some of the Big Ten stats. Offensively, they're ranked in the top 3 in the Big Ten offensively. And defensively, they're no slouch either. What's been the key to success? Is it Cignetti's formula? Is it the transfer portal? Is it a combination of everything? Look, Indiana's eyeing a college football playoff here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is how much Cignetti's players trust him. The backbone of this team, to a large extent, is the 13 guys that he brought over from James Madison. There's some of the best players on this team are guys that played for Cignetti at JMU and believed in him enough and believed in his vision enough to follow him to Indiana. Guys like Elijah Surratt and Aiden Fisher and Jalen Walker, Tyson Lawton, guys like that who are really the backbone of this team in a lot of ways. And then they have kind of infused the roster and some of the other transfers as well with a belief that this team can win games and can do it convincingly. And I think they came into the season with that belief. Cignetti spent the entire offseason talking about how they wanted to create that belief, and it seems like they have it. And now they've gone out in the field and proved it. And so I think it is the formula, and I think that the formula was allowed to work in large part because of the transfer portal. Obviously, in the past, you could have guys who had a formula and had a plan, but it was going to take several years to build. And I think Cignetti was able to bring in guys to win right away because of the transfer portal and bring a lot of his players with him. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Offensively, overall, they're first in the Big Ten. Again, I'm just pulling up some stats here. They're second in passing. Rushing, if I can get to it here. They're third in rushing offensively. Defensively, total defense, they're fourth. They are, where are we at here passing wise? They're sort of like middle of the pack, maybe like middle of the pack. Rushing defense, though, they're first. So is the offense and defense feeding off one another? And what is the status? We know Curtis Rourke has is it a broken finger? What do we know about the backup?
Yeah, I think it is to a large extent the offense and defense are feeding off each other. You talk about the Big Ten. IU is actually the number 1 scoring offense in the entire country right now. They're averaging 48 points a game. Curtis Rourke has been one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten and in the country. Quite frankly, he's averaging 10.7 yards per attempt, which is number 2 in the entire country behind Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. So losing him is a significant blow to this team. He's been awesome. Like he makes really tough throws look easy, and he's made a lot of them this year. And so losing him is tough. He is going to probably almost certainly miss this game against Washington. He has a thumb injury. We don't know the exact nature of the injury. It seems like he had the thumbnail kind of torn off, at least in part, as he hit it on a Nebraska player's helmet in that game.
Yeah.
There was a lot of blood, it seemed like. So he had surgery for it reportedly yesterday, and he is going to miss probably at least one game. But they are hopeful. It's unclear, but hopeful that he can play the following week against Michigan State on the road. Right now, they're going to start Taven Jackson against Washington. That seems to be the plan. Jackson is a former 4-star recruit. He played a year at Tennessee. He transferred to IU before last season. He's an Indiana native guy. Grew up about 40 minutes or so from Bloomington. He is the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, who was an Indiana basketball star for many years. And he started several games last year for the Hoosiers and was generally pretty good. The offense wasn't particularly good around him, and so there were some times where he looked rough. But he has a good arm. He can get the ball down the field. He has athleticism. He can move in the pocket and can make some plays with his legs. And I think he just has a much better support system around him this year than he did last season. And so I do think that there's going to be some level of offensive success that IU continues to have even with him in the game. I think he can make some plays. They like him a lot. He was very, very good in the second half of that game against Nebraska. He played the entire second half, 7 of 8 for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns, a couple of nice runs in there as well. So they're losing something with Rourke out. There's no doubt about that. He's just been so good, but I do. There is hope and belief that Jackson can do a reasonable facsimile of what Rourke has done this season and keep the offense moving, especially with so much of a supporting cast around him and on the coaching staff. It's been very, very good on that for building the offense.
And I have to apologize, Mr. Dylan Sinn, the Journal Gazette. IU covers IU, Notre Dame, Purdue, at Tin Caps, beat writer for the Journal Gazette, at JG Fort Wayne. IA's a millennial twit.
I got an email with someone. I had someone send me an email calling me that one time, which is very fun. So
IU at hashtag Merrill Made alum comments. DSIN at jg.net.
Yes.
So they're going to play Washington this week. Obviously, that's 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. I don't see them losing this football game, and they've got too much riding on it. Washington is not what they've been. The stretch that I'm concerned about is at Michigan State. Not easy.
No.
Then they've got Michigan at home, and look, Michigan's in a little bit of a disarray right now. Then it's at Ohio State, which is huge, and of course the old Oaken Bucket against Purdue, and Purdue they might be the worst team in the Big Ten actually. So all winnable, except maybe for the Ohio State game. Tough, but the way they're playing right now, Ohio State's already got a Big Ten loss. Oregon's the cream of the crop right now. I still think Oregon's going to screw up somewhere because they always do. I wouldn't see why Indiana, if they beat Washington, they beat Michigan State. I think they beat Michigan. They might lose to Ohio State. They beat Purdue. If we're, 12-1, 11-1, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't make an at-large bid.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think that 11-1, I think they probably get in. A lot of it would some of it would depend on how the Big Ten championship race shook out. If they go there and they take a second loss, does that change things? I don't think so. I think if you get into the Big Ten championship game, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot. But yeah, I think 11 wins gets them to the playoff. I do think that this game against Washington is going to be a little bit tougher than some of the other ones they've had, mostly because of the quarterback situation. I do think Washington has some things that they can do. Their defense has been pretty good this year, and so they did get tuned up by Iowa the last time they played. But it's still a good team. They're the bones of a good roster there, even though they're obviously not the same as they were last year. They lost all those guys. But Jed Fish brought in a ton of transfers. They're building towards something. I think that they're going to be motivated coming into that game. And then Michigan State is going to try to drag that game into the mud. And Indiana has not really played a team that's capable of doing that yet. So we'll see. I actually think of the 3 games before Ohio State, I feel the best about Michigan. I don't see Indiana having much trouble at all beating Michigan, quite frankly, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. I think they're going to be favored by about 10 points in that game, which is also crazy to say. But the reality is that they are going to be favored in all three of those games by somewhere between 7 and 10 points or more. And if they win them, they are going to the playoff. I think it's safe to say. So that is a monumental situation that Indiana finds itself in. I think that I wrote it last week. I think that they make the playoff this year. You can immediately start building a statue of Chris Signetti in Bloomington. He's already done more than basically any coach ever at IU. If that does indeed happen, obviously they still have to win the games, and these games are not going to be easy, and they're going to be tested in ways they've not been tested before. But it really would be a monumental achievement for year one for a team that has won 7 combined games over the previous 3 years. Or nine combined games over the previous 3 years. Excuse me.
I believe College Game Day is going to be on the campus.
College Game Day is going to be in Bloomington for the first time on a Saturday. They were there for a Thursday game against Ohio State in 2017 in Bloomington. That was a season opener Thursday. This is the first time they've ever been there for a Saturday game. It's going to be sold out. It is going to be an electric atmosphere in Bloomington. I'm looking forward to being there for that.
And I'm already for certain, I'm sure who Coach Corso is going to pick in this game.
I would be shocked if you put on a Husky. I do think the open question about that is what kind of gear is he going to don, because Indiana doesn't really have a mascot head to put on. So I'm curious as to what kind of gear he's going to put on. Maybe he brings out one of those red sweaters that he wore during his tenure when he was Indiana's coach in the 70s and 80s. That would be a lot of fun.
Indiana favorite by 6.5, the latest line I see. If anybody's interested in the weather, AccuWeather stating 65 degrees at kickoff, nice and sunny, great Big Ten football weather. So I'm picking Indiana. I'm not even going to go Washington because Indiana's got something going. Since you covered the other teams as well, another big one, Notre Dame Navy. Look, the last, Navy had their number for a little while, and then Notre Dame flipped the script. But look, Navy's no slouch this year. Notre Dame's favored by 12.5. This will be Navy's biggest test. But, Notre Dame can be sort of up and down, Dylan, as we've seen throughout the year. And look, we already know what Navy's going to do. It's no secret. They're going to run the ball. If they throw the ball more than 5 times a game or even 10 times a game, I don't know. I'll have to think of something I'll have to do.
Well, it's interesting because they've actually incorporated a lot of some passing into their offense this year. Their quarterback, Dylan Horvath, is throwing probably around between 10 and 15 passes a game. And they're hitting for big plays. Like he's averaging somewhere around 10 yards per attempt. It's really, really impressive what he's done. It's a modified triple option. It's more of a shotgun option system now that they run, kind of more like what Jamie Chadwell runs at Liberty, because they're trying to evolve. They're trying to get a little bit more diverse because it seemed like they thought the triple option was getting a little bit stale. And it's worked. Their offense is putting up enormous numbers and they're hitting big plays. They have one of the highest explosive rates in the country because these teams are loading up to stop the run and then they're getting beat over the top. And so Notre Dame's defense, which is young because they've had some injuries, Notre Dame's defense is extraordinarily talented, but it's very young at this point. Outside of the defensive tackles and Howard Cross and Riley Mills, who are 6th-year seniors, there's a lot of youth on that team. They're going to have to be really disciplined. I think that's going to be the story of the day is can you stay disciplined and not get beat over the top? Because that's what Navy wants to do is they want to hit 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 60-yard touchdown. That's the plan. And it's worked against everyone this year to the tune of like one of the best offenses in the country. So Notre Dame has its hands full.
So I'll ask you this: since Notre Dame already lost to the thriving football program of Northern Illinois, if they lose to Navy and Notre Dame goes 6-2, where does Marcus Freeman stand?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on how the rest of the season goes, right? I think that obviously it would not be good for him. I don't see him. I think he's fine this year. I don't see anything happening there. I think that, first of all, they have a good team. I don't see the team falling apart in any way. So, like, it's not like a loss against Navy is going to precipitate some kind of collapse. I don't see that happening. This team seems like it's together, and they have some strong leadership. So I assume they'll still finish with a fine record. I do think that missing the playoff this year would be a significant disappointment, considering how easy the schedule ended up being outside of these games against Army and Navy, quite frankly, and Texas, and then beating Texas A&M. And all of the talent they brought back, there was kind of a movement on this defense with Mills and Cross and Jack Kaiser and Benjamin Morris and guys that they know are going to be gone next year, or almost certain are going to be gone next year, to come back for one more ride. And I think that losing to Navy would be one of those things where it's really hard to get past that. It would take a while. That would be an extreme disappointment for this program to not only lose to Navy, a team that you've beaten several years in a row, but to have it knock you out of the playoff race, because that's what it is. Notre Dame is probably almost certainly in the playoff at 11-1 and almost certainly out of the playoff at 10-2. That's kind of where things stand for them. They don't have any margin for error anymore. And so I do think that would be a really tough pill to swallow. I don't think anything would happen in terms of like firing. That's not going to happen. He's building towards something at Notre Dame, but that would be a significant setback and people would not be happy.
And then lastly here, I hate to bring it up for Purdue fans, but look, Northwestern is a winnable game, but then the last 4 games are brutal. You're at Penn State, or I'm sorry, you're at Ohio State, you're home against Penn State, you're at Michigan State, and then you're going to run into a buzzsaw in Indiana probably. So Purdue on the right track. Do we need to give them more time? Where do we stand as a program with Purdue? I'm sort of out of the loop when it comes to Purdue. I just know that they've struggled the last couple of years, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Yeah, they brought in a lot of transfers this season, and very few, like, they haven't panned out the way they thought. I think it's safe to say some of them have been hurt. Nyland Green has been hurt. CJ Smith has been hurt. The wide receiver they brought in, those are 2 of the guys they really expected to be contributors this year. They've been hurt much of the season. That hasn't helped. Hudson Card, the starting quarterback, is hurt, and Ryan Brown, actually the backup, has played pretty well. But yeah, everyone knew it was going to be difficult because you went 4-8 last year, which was understandable. It was year 1, and they lost so much after Jeff Brom left. But this year, the schedule was so hard that it was going to be difficult to build any momentum. And then they haven't won the games that looked winnable at the beginning of the season. They didn't beat Oregon State. They didn't beat Illinois. They didn't beat Wisconsin. And in fact, they lost to Wisconsin badly. And now Wisconsin looks better, so that's a little bit different. But it hasn't been good. And I think if you're Purdue, you have to be looking at what Indiana is doing and saying, why isn't that us? What happened here? You know, I don't think anyone expected Purdue to be 7-0 in Ryan Walters' first year, but the fact that Indiana was able to get someone to do it suggests that it's doable, right? And so if Purdue ends up going 1-11 or 2-10, it would be the worst season since 2015. I think that's tough. I don't know if Ryan Walters will get a 3rd season, and I know Purdue is a patient place. They've been patient before. Mike Babinski is a patient guy, but that's tough. Right, after going 4-8 and 2-10 in the first 2 years of a tenure, in the transfer portal era, when you've been given a decent, they've really tried to build out the NIL infrastructure, and they've done a good job of bringing in some high level guys. And now they're losing some recruits in high school. They're having some decommitments happen, which is not a good sign. So it's not a good situation there right now. I think if you beat Northwestern, things quiet down a little bit, but not much because you have such a difficult schedule after that. So it doesn't seem to be heading in a great direction, but there's still talent on this team, so we'll see.
Notre Dame, Navy, who you got?
I have Notre Dame. I think that they should be able to run the football on Navy. They've been able to run the football on just about everyone this year, and they're much bigger on the line than Navy is. So as long as Riley Leonard avoids turnovers, I think Notre Dame probably is able to win. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think Navy is going to make it ugly, but it's a ranked win. You go win a game against a ranked team. It doesn't matter how you win. They're not looking for style points here. They don't need them. If you go 11-1, you're in the playoff. Just win the game. I
think I know where you're going to go with Indiana, Washington. So
I think it's going to be closer than Indiana.
Do you really?
I do think it's going to be closer than most of the games Indiana's played this year. I think that they are going to be in a fight in the second half in a way that they've only been maybe once or twice this year. And it's going to be a little bit of a gut check for a team that kind of rolled against Nebraska. It's yet another example of Cignetti needing to have his players ready. He's met every single challenge with that this year. Every single game they have been up and ready to go. But with Rourke out, that decreases the margin for error significantly. You're not going to be able to just score at will. I don't think. I think that Jackson's going to do okay, but you're going to have to get some stops. And I do think that this is going to be a game into the second half. I think IU probably is able to run the ball well enough to win, but I think it's a little bit tighter than what you saw against Nebraska would lead you to believe.
Well, preseason, I had Oregon beating Ohio State in the regular season, but then I had Ohio State winning the Big Ten in the rematch. But look, if Indiana beats Ohio State, then it shoots everything out the window for me. And look, why not Indiana? You know what I mean? I think it would be a fantastic story.
It really would.
You know what I mean? You knock off a big boy in Ohio State if they can pull it off. Like you said, I don't think they struggle with Michigan. Michigan right now is in transition. The other than Ohio State, we'll see how they play against Ohio State. I think the tricky game for them is going to be Michigan State, because Michigan State's doing a lot better than they thought they would this year. They're probably going to make a bowl game, Michigan State. I didn't think they'd be like 4-3 after 7 games, but other than the Ohio State game, Dylan, I think that Michigan State game may loom large for them.
I think so. Like I said earlier, Jonathan Smith is going to have some stuff ready for that game. They're going to do some different things. Aiden Childs is going to be the most athletic quarterback that Indiana has faced this year. And they are just going to try to drag that game into the mud and make Indiana play just an ugly, ugly football game and try to pull out a win at the end. Indiana hasn't really faced a team that's tried to do that this year. No, I thought Northwestern would try, and they really didn't. So we'll see. I think Michigan State is obviously gettable. I don't think they're a juggernaut yet, although I do think they will be very, very good very, very soon. I'm really a fan of what Jonathan Smith is doing there. But it is a road test against a team that is a lot better than people think, that is not going to back down from anybody. And I think that is the type of game that if you are what Indiana aspires to be, then you need to go win that game. And I feel that way about all 3 of these games coming up. Washington, Michigan State, Michigan. If you are what Indiana purports to be and they want to be a playoff team, you win those games. You are the better team. You're going to be favored. Go win the game. And I think that's the way Indiana has to look at it now. You are a big boy team now.
That is Dylan Sinn, ladies and gentlemen. Journal Gazette, bunch of other things, a millennial twit that he is. So, Dylan, enjoy the game Saturday. Enjoy the rest of the year. Look, if Indiana beats Ohio State, you know I'm going to hit you up. So,
of course. I look forward to that, Ryan. I would be happy to come out with you if that does indeed happen.
All right, Dylan. Have a good night.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dylan Sinn covering Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame. Indiana's got something going, ladies and gentlemen. Why not Indiana this year? I think it would be a fantastic story. Let's recap week 8 of the college football season. It started last Friday. It's all top 25 stuff. Oregon beat the hell out of Purdue, 35-0. Like I said, Purdue is probably the worst team in the Big Ten. Dylan Gabriel for Oregon, 21-25, 290, 2 touchdowns, a pick. Jordan James, 10 carries, 50 yards for 2 touchdowns. Leading receiver was Evan Stewart. 4 catches, 96 yards. Leading tackler was Telton Tuioti, 6 total tackles. Purdue had it rough. Ryan Brown, 9-19, 93 yards, no touchdowns, a pick. But Purdue ran the ball effectively. They ran the ball collectively 40 times for 208 yards. So Oregon might want to shore that up a little bit. Leading receiver, Max Clare, 3 catches, 32 yards. Leading tackler, Yanni Karloftis. If the name sounds familiar, it should. 8 tackles. Kindred's Breedlove, 8 tackles. Really, Purdue really couldn't do anything. They ran the ball, but they couldn't pass the ball or squat. And Purdue couldn't stay on the field. So there you have it. And Oregon's the new number 1 ranked team in the nation. The aforementioned Indiana Hoosiers kicked the shit out of Nebraska, which is a surprise for me. Nebraska now 5-2. Oh, I forgot to say. Oregon is now 7-0 overall, 4-0 in the Big Ten. Purdue 1-6, 0-4 in the Big Ten. Indiana wins 56-7. Wasn't close. Dylan Raiola for Nebraska, the Golden Boy, struggled 28 of 44, 234, no touchdowns, 3 picks. Heinrich Harburg, leading rusher, 5 carries, 32 yards. Nebraska couldn't do anything. Receiving Thomas Fedone the second, 6 catches, 91 yards. Isaac Gifford, 8 solo tackles. For Indiana, Curtis Rourke was 17 of 21, 189, a touchdown, a pick. Unfortunately, he broke his thumb. Taven Jackson replaced him, 7 of 8, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Justice Ellison, 9 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Elijah Sarrett and Miles Cross each had a touchdown apiece. Aiden Fisher, 11 total tackles for the Hoosiers. Nebraska turned it over 5 times, ladies and gentlemen. When you can only run the ball for 70 yards and you turn it over 5 times, you get your ass kicked. It's not black and white. It's not even gray or black and white. It's transparent. Let's see. Who else? BYU in a thriller beats Oklahoma State. Nebraska's 5-2 overall, 2-2 Big Ten. Indiana 7-0, 4-0 in the Big Ten. Again, BYU beats Oklahoma State 38-35. Back and forth game throughout. Oklahoma State had the lead. BYU came back. Oklahoma State, BYU. The BYU prevails. Alan Bowman and Garrett Rangel each played for Oklahoma State. Each threw a touchdown apiece, and each had a pick apiece. Ollie Gordon II got on track, 16 carries, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brendan Presley, 5 catches, 43 yards and a touch. Leading tacklers were Kobe Hilton and Parker Robertson with 11 solo tackles. For BYU, Jake Retzlaff up and down, 13 of 26, 218, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, which hurt. LJ Martin, the leading rusher, 20 carries, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. Darius Lassiter, 6 of 29, 1 touchdown receiving. And Harris Taggart, 11 solo tackles. BYU turned it over 3 times, Oklahoma State twice. It was an evenly matched game throughout, but as most case with these games, it comes down to whoever makes one more play, and BYU did. BYU is 7-0 in the Big 12. 7-0 overall. 4-0 in the Big 12. Oklahoma State drops to 3-4, 0-4 in the Big 12. I had Oklahoma State go into the college football playoff, I think. Silly me. I will go down the rest of these by where they were ranked last week. Navy took Charlotte behind the woodshed, 51-17. Wasn't close. For Charlotte, Max Brown was 7 of 18, 152, 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks. Charlotte was able to run the ball, 48 carries collectively for 200 yards. But they couldn't pass the ball, though. Leading tackler was Reed Wilford for 8 solo tackles. For Navy, Blake Horvath, again, 7 of 13, 117, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Again, Navy doesn't pass the ball a lot. They actually threw the ball more than 10 times, which is it's got to be some sort of record. I don't know. Alex Tezka, 8 carries, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also added a reception for 46 yards and a touchdown. Colin Ramos was their leading tackler, 12 solo tackles. The difference, ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte turned it over 5 times, Navy none. So, Navy just dominate. You're turning the ball over 5 times, forget it. Navy is 6-0, 4-0 in conference. Charlotte is 3-4, 2-1 in conference. We go down the rest here. Army, a little bit of a tussle with East Carolina. but Army wins 45-28. East Carolina, Caton Hauser, 24-38, 282, 3 touchdowns, a pick. East Carolina couldn't run the ball. 20 carries for 87 yards collectively. Chase Sowell, 7 catches, 138, and a touchdown. Leading tacklers were Devin King and Zay Parker with 8 solo tackles apiece. For Army, doing what they do, Bryson Daly was 7 of 10 for 147 yards and a touchdown. 10 times they threw the ball. Bryson Daly and Kanye Udo each had over 100 yards. Bryson Daly, 31 carries, 171 yards, 5 touchdowns rushing. Have yourself a day. Casey Reynolds, 3 catches for 85 yards. Max D. Domenico was their leading tackler with 7 solo tackles. When you're out rushing your opponent over 3-1, you're going to win the football game. Clock management. So, Army improves to 7-0, 6-0 in conference. East Carolina now 3-4 overall, 1-2 in conference play. We go down the list. Illinois with a hard-fought win over your Michiganders. Illinois wins 21-7. Michigan in all, well, not trouble, but they're just going to have one of those years after winning a national championship. Michigan, Jake Tuttle started. He was 20 of 32, 208, no touchdowns and a pick. Khalil Mullings, 19 carries, 87 yards and a touch. Colston Loveland, 7 catches for 83 yards. Leading tackler was Jayshon Barham, 7 total tackles. Illinois, Luke Altmaier, pedestrian day. He was 9 of 18, 80 yards and a touchdown. No picks. Collectively, Illinois ran the ball 38 times for 187 yards. Pat Bryant, your leading receiver, 4 catches, 32 yards. Gabe Jackas, Dylan Rosiak, and Matthew Bailey each had 10-plus solo tackles apiece. If you want to know the difference in the ball game, ladies and gentlemen, Michigan turned it over thrice. Illinois none. Illinois continues to have a decent season at 6-1 overall, 3-1 in the Big Ten. Michigan is 4-3 overall, 2-2 in the Big Ten. If you're hearing the wolf howl, that is my cell phone going off, which I forgot to turn off the notifications. SMU beat up on the Stanford Cardinal, 40-10. That game wasn't close. SMU, Kevin Jennings was 17-27, 322, 3 touchdowns a pick. Brashard Smith, 8 carries, 67 yards, although L.J. Johnson had 9 carries, 45 yards, 2 touchdowns. Moochie Dixon, Kayshawn Smith, and R.J. Maryland each had a touchdown apiece receiving. Ahmad Moses, 6 total tackles. For Stanford, Elijah Brown was 16-32, 153, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Stanford running the football, ladies and gentlemen, 35 times for 33 yards. Sam Roush, 6 catches for 75 yards. And Tristan Sinclair, 12 solo tackles for Stanford. SMU actually turned it over 3 times, Stanford twice. But when you're only running the ball for 33 yards on 35 carries, some of them are sacks. They basically SMU outrushed Stanford basically 6-1. That's all you need to know. It's not rocket science. SMU is 6-1 overall, 3-0 in the ACC. Stanford 2-5 overall, They are 1-3. That's right. I said it. Stanford is 1-3 overall in the ACC. In another close game that Missouri has played this year in an SEC battle, Missouri beats Auburn 21-17. Auburn actually was up 17-6 after the third quarter. And then Auburn snatched defeat away from victory. For Auburn, Peyton Thorne was 17-29, 176, a touchdown, no picks. Jarquez Hunter, 19 carries, 57 yards. Robert Lewis and Malcolm Simmons each had 4 catches apiece. Dorian Mossai Jr., 9 total tackles. For Missouri, Brady Cook and Drew Pine both played. No touchdowns, no interceptions between them. Missouri had a hard time running the football, although Marcus Carroll, 8 carries, 40 yards and a touch. Mookie Cooper, 2 catches for 84 yards. Marvin Burks was your leading tackler for Missouri. Really, the difference in the game for me was Missouri was 17 on fourth down, and Auburn was 4 of 14. Auburn couldn't stay on the field offensively. And, of course, Missouri made just one more play than Auburn did. Auburn 2-5 overall, 0-4 in the SEC. Missouri 6-1 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. As we go down the list. Kansas State goes on the road in Morgantown, West Virginia. Beats West Virginia 45-18. Kansas State pulled away in the second half. Kansas State, Avery Johnson, 19-29, 298, 3 touchdowns, no picks. DJ Giddens, 19 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Jackson had 2 catches for 84 yards and a touch. Leading tackler was Austin Romaine, 12 total tackles. West Virginia, Garrett Green, 9-19, 85 yards, of touchdowns, 2 picks. He also ran the ball 11 times for 89 yards. Cole Taylor and Traylon Ray for West Virginia each had 4 receptions apiece. Josiah Trotter, the leading tackler, with 8 solo tackles. West Virginia really couldn't muster up anything. They turned it over twice. Kansas State didn't turn it over any. Kansas State was 7-12 on third down, and West Virginia 5-17. Kansas State hit on a lot of big plays. That was the difference in the game, and then their defense took over in the second half. It was all she wrote. Kansas State now 6-1 overall, 3-1 in the Big 12. West Virginia's 3-4 overall, 2-2 in the Big 12. I forgot to mention that Navy American Conference and Army American Conference. Texas A&M beat a scrappy Mississippi State squad, 34-24. Texas A&M got all that could handle from Mississippi State. Texas A&M, Connor Weidman was 15-25, 217, a touchdown, but 2 picks. Le'Veon Moss leading rusher, 17 for 65 for 2 touchdowns. Jabri Barber, 6 catches, 92 yards. The leading tackler was Tareen York, 12 total tackles. Mississippi State, Michael Van Bruin Jr. had a good day, 22 of 41, 242, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Devon Booth and Johnny Daniels each had over 50 yards rushing. Kevin Coleman Jr., 8 catches, 89 yards and a touch. Isaac Smith and Nick Mitchell each had 10-plus solo tackles apiece. Thought the game was it was really even for a while. Texas A&M sort of like took over in the third quarter. Looking over at some of the other stats, Texas A&M was 9 of 14 on third down. Mississippi State was 5 of 16 on third down. Thought that was sort of the difference in the game there. Texas A&M now 6-1 overall, 4-0 in the SEC. They're actually on top of the SEC. Mississippi State is now 1-6 overall, 0-4 in the SEC. As we come up on quarter to the hour here. In a game I thought Georgia Tech would win, Notre Dame winds up beating Georgia Tech 31-13. Georgia Tech was up 7-0 after the first quarter, and then they didn't score till the fourth. Notre Dame's defense sort of like shut them down until the fourth quarter. For Notre Dame, Riley Leonard was 20 of 29, 203, no touchdowns, a pick. He also ran the ball 10 times for 51 yards, and he rushed for 2 touchdowns. Jeremiah Love, 3 catches, 57 yards. Drake Bowen, 9 total tackles for Notre Dame. Georgia Tech, Zach Pyron was 20 of 36, 269 yards, touchdowns, 2 picks, unfortunately. He was their leading rusher, 13 catches, 45 yards. Eric Singleton Jr., 6 catches, 59 yards. Just remember, Georgia Tech did not have their starting quarterback Haynes in there, which was sort of huge. Georgia Tech, Tay Seymour, 7 total tackles. Really, the difference in the game for me was Georgia Tech, they could not run the football. Notre Dame ran the football effectively. And I thought that's what the difference in the game was. I mean, Georgia Tech just could not get anything in the run game going. Notre Dame is now 6-1. Georgia Tech 5-3 on the season. ACC battle, Clemson shootout, 48-31 over Virginia. Dabo kind of pulled his starters after the third quarter, and then Virginia started to make a run. Then he stuck his starters back in. So Clemson, 48-31. Virginia, Anthony Calandria and Tony Muskett each had 2 touchdowns apiece passing. Virginia couldn't get anything in the run game going, though. 29 carries for 68 yards collectively. Ethan Davies, Malachi Fields, Dakota Twitty, sounds like a country and western star, and Sackett Wood Jr. each had a touchdown receiving apiece. Trey McDonald with 11 total tackles. Cade Klubnik, 23 of 35, 308, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Phil Mustafa Matha, I call him, 18 carries, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. TJ Moore, 4 catches, 78 yards and a touch. Leading tackler was Wade Woodaz, 7 total tackles. Again, difference in the game for me was Clemson ran the ball for almost 200 yards, Virginia for 68. Score is a little bit misleading just from the standpoint that Clemson pulled their starters, and then the backups for Clemson sort of like we're making it a lot closer than it should have been. Clemson 6-1 overall, 5-0 in the ACC. Virginia 4-3 overall, 2-2 ACC. Iowa State still undefeated with an exciting win over Baylor, 38-35. I believe it was a last-second field goal. From what I remember, I was watching so many games that your mind gets shuffled. Central Florida, Ja'Cory Brown, 8 of 20, 62 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. But ladies and gentlemen, Iowa State might want to shore up their run defense a little bit. RJ Harvey, 25 carries, 196, 2 touchdowns. Ja'Cory Brown, 13 carries, 154, 2 touchdowns. Central Florida ran the ball 39 times for 354 yards and 4 touchdowns. And they lost. They only passed the ball 62 yards passing. Zaria Alexander and Quadric Bullard each had 10-plus tackles apiece. For Iowa State, Rocco Becht was 20 of 46, 274, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. It was a rushing display. Neither rush defenses showed up. Rocco Becht, 20 carries, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Carson Hansen, 9 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Iowa State ran the ball collectively 48 times for 256 yards. Jalen Noel, 8 catches, 153 yards. Malik Verdon was their leading tackler with 11 total tackles. Difference in the contest for me. Iowa State was 6 of 19 on third down. UCF was 3 of 12. A lot of big plays in this game. I thought UCF played well enough to win, but again, Iowa State just made one more play. Iowa State now 7-0 overall, 4-0 in the Big 12. UCF 3-4 overall, 1-3 in the Big 12. Pardon me while I take a sip of my refreshing beverage. In the game, I thought that Arkansas would win. LSU beats Arkansas 34-10. Really wasn't that close, to be honest with you. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier was 23 of 34, 233, no touchdowns, no picks. Caden Durham, 21 carries, 103 yards, and 3 touchdowns rushing. CJ Daniels, 7 catches, 86 yards, was the leading receiver. And Whit Weeks, 9 total tackles. For Arkansas, Taylon Green, 21 of 31, 240, a touchdown and a pick. The difference in the game, ladies and gentlemen, Arkansas only ran the ball 19 times for 38 yards. Andrew Armstrong, 7 catches, 94 yards and a touch. Leading tackler was Danico Slaughter, 10 total tackles for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Again, difference in the game, Arkansas turned it over 3 times and only ran the ball for 38 yards. Again, it's not black and white, it's not gray, it's transparent. That is not a recipe for success. LSU is 6-1 overall, 3-0 in the SEC. Arkansas is now 4-3 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Alabama drops to Tennessee, 24-17. Game was back and forth, twists and turns. Jalen Milroe was 25 of 45, 239, a touchdown, but he threw the 2 picks. I thought Tennessee's rush defense did a great job. Alabama was only able to rush it 34 times for 75 yards, so they won in the trenches. Ryan Williams, the leading receiver, 8 catches, 73 yards and a touch. Leading tackler was Deontay Lawson, 11 total tackles. Nico Ayamaleva for Tennessee, 14 of 27, 184, a touchdown and a pick. Dylan Sampson with the big day, 26 carries, 139, and 2 touchdowns rushing. Tennessee ran the ball effectively 43 times for 214 yards. Brew McCoy, 6 catches, 80 yards. Will Brooks and Jermod McCoy were your leading tackler, was 8 solo tackles apiece. Again, I thought the difference in the game, both teams were, actually it was a fugly game. Fugly. Alabama was penalized 15 times on 115 yards. Tennessee 11 for 95. Tennessee turned it over 3 times. Alabama 2. Sloppy game. But again, Tennessee tripled them in rushing yardage. And Alabama was only 3 of 14 on third down. Tennessee was 2 of 14, or 6 of 14. I'm sorry. Tennessee now 6-1 overall, 3-1 in the SEC. Alabama probably not making the college football playoff unless all kinds of hell really breaks loose. They are 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Alabama fans are ready to fire Kalen DeBoer, and that's what happens when you get spoiled. In another wild one that the Hurricanes were in, they survive against Louisville 52-45, back and forth. Offensive, the defenses did not show up. Cam Ward continues to push his Heisman campaign forward. 21-32, 319, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Damian Martinez, 12 carries, 89 yards and a touch. Samuel Brown, Xavier Restrepo over 100 yards each and a touchdown apiece. Darryl Porter Jr., 9 total tackles. Tyler Schall matched Cam Ward. He was 31 of 51 for 342 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Isaac Brown now carries 56 yards and a touch. Ja'Cory Brooks, 6 catches, 107, 2 touchdowns. Tamarian McDonald, 9 total tackles. Really evenly matched. It was nip and tuck. Really, when you go and look at the overall team stats, Miami was 9 of 15 on third down, and Louisville was 3 of 12. A lot of big plays, but Louisville only converting on 3 of 12. I thought that was the difference in a football game. Miami 7-0 overall, 3-0 in the ACC. Louisville 4-3 overall and 2-2 in the ACC. And the big one of the day, Georgia makes a statement. Game wasn't close. They took Texas behind the woodshed, beat them 30-15. I said I picked Texas to win the game because I didn't like the way Carson Beck was playing. And he looked awful again. He was 23 of 41, 175 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. Trevor Etienne, 19 carries, 87 yards, 3 touchdowns rushing. Georgia, Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith with 4 catches and 6 catches apiece. Jalen Walker, 8 total tackles, but the whole Georgia defense came to play. Quinn Ewers was 25 of 43, 211, 2 touchdowns, a pick. At one point, he got benched. Arch Manning did no better. Quinn Ewers and Archie Manning were sacked a lot. Quinn Ewers was sacked so much, he had 6 carries for negative 34 yards. Quintravian Wisner, 15 carries, 52 yards. But with Quinn Ewers being sacked, collectively it was 27 carries for 29 yards. Matthew Golden, 3 catches, 77 yards. And Michael Taffy, 9 total tackles. Again, another ugly game. Texas turned it over 4 times, Georgia 3. Texas was 2 of 15 on third down, and they ran the ball for 29 yards. It was an ass whooping of epic proportions. So, Texas is now 6-1 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. UGA is 6-1 overall, 4-1 in the SEC. So let's jump ahead to week number 9. Holy shit. I cannot believe it's week 9 already. If anybody's interested, there is a college football game on right now. A couple of them. At halftime, Sam Houston and Florida International are scoreless. Defensive struggle. That's on ESPNU and on CBS Sports Network right now. UTEP leads 7-0 early in the second period. 7-0 over Louisiana Tech. So let's jump to the top 25 this week. Tomorrow at 7:30. I'm sorry, on Thursday. My bad. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Syracuse 5-1, travels to Pitt. Number 19, Pitt, 6-0. Pitt favored by 6. I think this will be a close battle throughout. Syracuse having a decent season. I didn't think Pittsburgh would be undefeated. But I'm going to give the nod to Pitt here. I'm going to go Pitt 28, Syracuse 24. On Friday, your Boise State's ranked 17th take on UNLV at 6-1. Boise State 5-1. Boise State's favored by 3. Tough one to call for me. Again, this will be at 10:30 on Friday on CBS Sports Network. I'll tell you what, just for shits and giggles, I'm going to go UNLV. I'm going to go UNLV 30, Boise State 28. On Saturday, it doesn't get any easier for Nebraska. This will be on Fox at 12 p.m. High noon. 5-2 Nebraska goes on to take number 4 Ohio State. Ohio State's favored by 25.5. Ohio State's coming off a bye. Ohio State's coming off the loss to Oregon. 25.5 seems high to me. I think Ohio State wins the game. I think Nebraska may cover. Ohio State 44, Nebraska 17. 12 p.m. on ABC and ESPN Plus. Number 12 Notre Dame takes on number 24 Navy. Notre Dame is favored by 12.5. My man Dylan Sinn picked Notre Dame. I'm going the other way. I'm taking Navy. I think Navy has something for him. I don't doubt Notre Dame will run the football on Navy, but can Notre Dame stop the running attack in the new look offense from Navy all game long? I'm going to go Navy 34, Notre Dame 30. 12 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. 4-3 Washington heads into Bloomington to take on Indiana at 7-0. Indiana favored by 6.5. Dylan says it's going to be closer because of the injury to Kevin Wart. I think Indiana pulls away in the second half. I'm going to go Indiana 33, Washington 24. 12 p.m. on ESPN, Oklahoma at 4-3 travels to Ole Miss at 5-2. They are ranked 18th. Mississippi's favored by 20. Oklahoma right now looks bad. Ole Miss not where they want to be at 1-2 in the SEC. I think Ole Miss wins. I'm not sure they cover, though. I'm going to go Ole Miss 30, Oklahoma 14. At 3:30 p.m. on CBS Paramount Plus, number 20, Illinois travels to Oregon to take on the Dicks. Oregon favored by 21. Illinois hasn't faced the speed that Oregon possesses. I'm going to go Oregon 42, Illinois 20. 3:30 on ESPN, number 11, BYU travels to Central Florida. If I'm correct here. Yeah. Central Florida is 3-4, BYU 7-0. UCF is favored by 1.5, ladies and gentlemen. They're favored by 1.5. Somebody knows something I don't. I know. BYU 35, UCF 24. Number 21, Missouri travels to take on number 15, Alabama. Alabama's favored by 13.5. Alabama's in disarray. Missouri just seems to play all these close games. Closer than the experts think. Alabama 35, Missouri 27. Number 5, Texas travels to Vanderbilt. This will be on the SC Network. Texas favored by 18.5. How's Texas going to handle the loss? I think Vanderbilt will be game for a while. Texas pulls away, though. Texas 38, Vanderbilt 23. 7 p.m., Florida State takes on Miami at number 6. They are 6th. Miami favored by 21. Florida State is having a season to forget. I understand it's a rivalry game, but Miami 44, Florida State 17. At 7:30 p.m. on NBC and Peacock, number 3 Penn State travels to take on Wisconsin. Night game in Whiskey. Penn State favored by 6.5. Penn State better watch out. I better not cry. I think this is going to be closer than the experts think, but I think Penn State pulls it out. Penn State 31, Wisconsin 23. Number 8 LSU travels to take on number 14 Texas A&M, 7:30 p.m. on ABC and ESPN Plus. Texas A&M favored by 2.5. College Station 12th man, close. A&M 31, LSU 30. At 8 p.m. on ESPN 2, Kansas travels to take on number 16 Kansas State. Kansas State favored by 10. Forget it. Kansas State 43, Kansas 17. And a good one on the ACC network at 8 p.m. 22 SMU travels to Duke to take on Duke. SMU favored by 11.5. Duke makes this close. SMU 34, Duke 24. And ladies and gentlemen, I screwed up. Been a long day. But we've come that time in the program where it comes to you get the finger. And I already screwed up by telling you who was going to win the game. I just think they win. I think they do enough to win the football game. I've got to pull the finger up because they get the finger this week. Just give me a second here. If I can find it. I had it. I'm still looking for it. Give me 1 second. Talks among yourselves. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Navy, you get the finger. I'm picking Navy over Notre Dame, and we've got to play it, and I'll get out of the way. That's right. In tribute to Coach Lee Corso, who'll be in Bloomington, Indiana this week. He does the headgear. I'm starting this in tribute to him. Navy, you, my friends, get the finger. You will beat Notre Dame this weekend. I forget what I said the score was going to be. It doesn't matter. Navy wins. I think Notre Dame stubs their toe again. So, yes, Navy and your fans, you get the finger. I hope everyone enjoys the games the rest of the week. Tomorrow, I will be on the locker room. Not sure what time yet. I have to check. Make sure the guests that are coming on are coming on. So with that said, stay safe out there. Treat everybody well. Hug your loved ones. Treat everybody with kindness, compassion, and empathy. I will see everybody, hopefully, tomorrow. I'm out.